Have you ever thought about how a villain can completely transform a story? Villains often serve as the driving force of a narrative, challenging the hero and creating the conflict that keeps us hooked. Whether it's their sinister schemes, complex motivations, or the moral questions they raise, villains have a unique way of capturing our attention. Think about it. Would the story of the Lorax be as compelling without the cunning and greed of Aloysius O'Hare? Villains like him don't just provide obstacles, they define the stakes, push the narrative forward, and often hold a mirror to society's flaws. By analyzing their actions and the impact they have, we can uncover deeper meanings in the stories we love. Today, we're diving deep into the mind and motivations of Aloysius O'Hare, the unforgettable antagonist of the Lorax. We'll explore not just what makes this fresh air tycoon such an impactful villain, but also the deeper meanings behind his role in the story. And of course, we'll dive into the social critiques embedded in his narrative. Grab some popcorn and let's get started. First off, who is Aloysius O'Hare? Aloysius O'Hare is the quintessential corporate villain of the Lorax, embodying the greed and manipulation often critiqued in modern society.
The last thing you want around here is trees. They're filthy!
In the artificial city of Thneedville, O'Hare isn't just a businessman. He's the mastermind behind a monopolized economy where even the air is commodified. This monopoly is a direct result of a society entirely disconnected from its natural roots, where environmental degradation is normalized and forgotten. Thneedville's citizens are content with their synthetic surroundings.
Clever, Mr. O'Hare. He knows his own name and everything.
Unaware of the consequences of living in a world devoid of trees and natural air. This societal complacency isn't accidental, it's a carefully orchestrated outcome of O'Hare's propaganda machine. By exploiting the people's ignorance and dependence on artificial products, O'Hare ensures that his empire remains unchallenged. His character doesn't merely serve as an antagonist, it mirrors a cautionary tale about the dangers of prioritizing profit over sustainability and community well-being. He's the tycoon of Thneedville, a city where everything is artificial and even the air is sold in bottles. Simply put, he's built an empire by exploiting environmental destruction and the population's dependency on his manufactured products. In O'Hare's classic line, "You've got a great city here, Ted. A lot of fun things to occupy your short attention span. Golly, I can't think of any reason why you'd want to leave this city ever again. Never."
Got a beautiful town here, Ted. Lots of fun stuff to occupy your short attention span. Well, I can't think of any reason you'd ever want to go outside of town again.
Perfectly encapsulates how he views Thneedville and its citizens, not as people with real desires, but as products to be consumed and manipulated. By stating that Ted has everything he needs to keep himself entertained, O'Hare isn't just praising the city's superficial appearance, but undermining any desire for change. For him, Thneedville is not a home for individuals with dreams or ambitions. It's a market where citizens are nothing more than consumers of his manufactured world. This kind of rhetoric highlights the psychological control O'Hare has over the population, suggesting that satisfaction lies in something external, prepackaged for consumption, rather than in anything authentic or natural. His comment about short attention span isn't just aimed at Ted, it's a subtle critique of society at large, implying that people are easily distracted and controlled by artificial stimuli. He doesn't see the citizens as individuals with real needs, or as a community with collective purpose. Instead, he views them as cogs in an economic machine he's built. The lack of reflection on the real needs of the population, coupled with constant distractions through his products and propaganda, turns the city and its inhabitants into mere consumers of the illusion of perfection he's selling. Moreover, the idea of perfection in Thneedville is not just about material things, but about an entire way of life O'Hare has manipulated. He's not merely selling bottled air, he's selling an ideology. He convinces the people that living without nature, trees, or fresh air is not only acceptable but desirable. In his eyes, any desire for change, like Ted's ambition to restore nature by planting a tree, is a threat to the perfect system he's built. When O'Hare says there's no reason to leave the city, he's reinforcing his dominance over the collective imagination of the people. In his world, the notion of a life beyond the artificial perfection of Thneedville doesn't even exist. In summary, O'Hare isn't just a villain, he's the embodiment of an entire system built on exploitation and unchecked consumerism, motivations, and methods of control. Now that we know who Aloysius O'Hare is, let's explore what truly drives him. What's his reason? For him, it's all about profit and control, but the way he goes about it is incredibly calculated. O'Hare uses 3 primary tactics to keep his empire running: propaganda, repression, and intimidation. Let's break these down in detail. First, propaganda creates the illusion that Thneedville is a utopia, a place where nature is unnecessary because technology provides everything. Through flashy commercials and slogans, O'Hare sells not just bottled air, but an idea that his artificial solutions are superior to anything the natural world can offer. This tactic mirrors real-world marketing strategies used by industries to promote products that may not truly be beneficial, such as the glorification of fast food or environmentally harmful goods. Second, repression is a key tool in O'Hare's arsenal. When Ted seeks to plant the last Trafula seed, O'Hare goes to great lengths to maintain his monopoly, from deploying security measures to inciting fear among the townspeople about change. This reflects how monopolistic corporations often suppress competition or stifle innovation to retain power. Lastly, there's intimidation. Despite his small stature, O'Hare wields enormous influence, using his position to intimidate those who challenge him. He doesn't hesitate to manipulate public opinion or use his wealth and resources to maintain control, much like how some powerful entities use lawsuits, lobbying, or media control to silence dissent. Together, these tactics paint a chilling picture of how unchecked greed and power can dominate not just an economy, but an entire way of life. Interestingly, the name O'Hare might carry a double meaning. On one hand, it could be a nod to the storyboard artist of the film, Mark O'Hare. On the other, it could symbolically reference air, which aligns with his entire business of selling bottled air. This clever wordplay ties his name directly to his villainous enterprise. But what's even more fascinating is how O'Hare serves as a darker counterpart to the once Lair, the central antagonist turned protagonist of the Lorax. Both characters are driven by profit and self-interest, yet their trajectories couldn't be more different. While the once leader succumbs to greed but ultimately regrets his actions, O'Hare is unapologetically ruthless, showing no remorse for his exploitation of the environment or his manipulation of Thneedville's citizens. If the once leader represents a cautionary tale about the dangers of greed and the possibility of redemption, O'Hare is the cautionary tale of what happens when greed goes unchecked. It's almost as if O'Hare is the logical endpoint of what the once Lear could have become had he never learned from his mistakes. This contrast not only deepens O'Hare's character, but also reinforces the movie's message about the consequences of our choices, both as individuals and as a society. When Ted decides to plant the last Truffula seed, O'Hare does everything in his power to stop him. This includes chasing the boy and manipulating the population against him.
That boy has a seed! We need to stop him!
Let's take a step back and compare O'Hare to other villains in the world of animation. How does he measure up against the likes of Scar from The Lion King, Lotso from Toy Story 3, or even corporate villains like Mr. Burns from The Simpsons? Scar, for instance, is driven by jealousy and a thirst for power, using manipulation and betrayal to achieve his goals. Similarly, Lotso leverages his past trauma to justify his authoritarian control over the daycare. O'Hare, on the other hand, represents a purely systemic form of villainy. Like Mr. Burns, O'Hare embodies corporate exploitation, but where Burns serves as an exaggerated satire for adults, O'Hare is crafted to resonate with children and families, making his critique of consumerism and environmental disregard more universally accessible. By placing O'Hare alongside these iconic figures, we see how he stands out as a representation of not just individual malice, but societal dysfunction. An immediate parallel is with Charles Montgomery Burns. Both are corporate figures embodying greed. Another interesting comparison is with villains like Scar from The Lion King or Lotso from Toy Story 3. Like them, O'Hare uses emotional manipulation to achieve his goals. However, unlike these villains, he doesn't have a tragic backstory or complex personal motivations. He is the personification of a system. Here's an interesting perspective. Some might argue that O'Hare and his bottled air empire saved Thneedville. After all, without his intervention, the city could have been left in ruin after the environmental devastation caused by the Once-Lurd. O'Hare built a thriving economy in a wasteland, transforming Thneedville into a prosperous city-state. Does that make him less of a villain? Well, not exactly. This argument brings up a curious dichotomy. On one hand, O'Hare's methods are undeniably exploitative and self-serving. On the other, his business model filled a void left by the once Lear's destruction. It's a classic question of whether the ends justify the means. But in O'Hare's case, the means are so ruthless that it's hard to sympathize. And then there's the other side of O'Hare, his almost cartoonish incompetence. Let's face it, while he's manipulative and greedy, he's also ridiculously over the top. His exaggerated expressions, diminutive stature, and bumbling antics make him more of a comedic villain than a truly terrifying one. Think about it, he's a man who built an empire selling bottled air, something that seems absurdly hilarious even as it highlights a dire critique of environmental neglect. This duality makes him a fascinating character, someone you can laugh at while still despising the world he represents. Message and impact. Now we come to the most important part. What does O'Hare represent and why does he matter? At the core, O'Hare is a biting critique of corporate greed and its devastating impact on the environment. His character symbolizes the consequences of commodifying natural resources, turning essentials like clean air into profitable goods. In today's world, his actions resonate with real-world issues like deforestation, pollution, and monopolization of basic resources. In the end, O'Hare's story is a reminder of our responsibility, not just to ourselves, but to future generations. The world we create today will shape the lives of those who come after us. So, let's make sure it's a world worth inheriting. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into Aloysius O'Hare, one of the most memorable animated villains of recent times. If you enjoyed this analysis, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below with your thoughts. Which animated villain should we tackle next? Let me know. Until next time, take care. And remember, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better.